Hi, it's Natalie, and I'll be answering the first few questions of the Flight 93 assignment for Team 3. First, analyze the lack of leadership which occurred in the Air Traffic Control Center. What were the contributing factors? The first I noticed was when the supervisor in the Boston Center did not trust the air traffic controller who first heard the terrorists. Leaders exhibit respect by recognizing and appreciating the importance and worth of others. Even though the air traffic controller does his job every day, he um, questioned the report he was given and did not completely respect the information being provided. He should have immediately pulled the tapes where he sooner would have heard the terrorists saying there were multiple planes, but instead he waited for more concrete information. This continued with the leader at the command center. When briefed on the situation, he went into a meeting and he waited for more information, not realizing the magnitude of what was about to happen. Because it was so hard to believe that there was an actual hijacking, it caused a delayed reaction. Which factors were present in air traffic control center communications? The communications were not competent in the control center. As the situation escalated, the command center continued to become more and more panicked. The leader set the emotional tone for the group, and he did not stay calm, possibly escalating the situation. Our goal should be to set the tone so that the whole group can succeed. My husband works for the FAA at the Los Angeles Center, which is one of the 21 air traffic control centers in the US, and he provided me with a little bit of information as we watched the film. Well, a lot of information. When they finally decided to ground the planes, they were calling all the air traffic control centers individually, taking up precious time. Since then, they put in many better new procedures. That way, in case of any emergency like this in the future, there'll be better communication. For example, all centers have a phone that's set up as a conference line that's muted. So if there is an emergency, all 21 centers can communicate immediately to each other. And this would definitely improve communication. Another part of the question is which factors were present in communication between air traffic control and coordinating agencies. There was a lack of communication with the military. The military was upset with what they were getting from the FAA. The air traffic control also delayed getting the military flights into the air. When grounding the planes, air traffic control should have communicated that the military was, of course, an exception when dealing with a hijacking situation. Leaders, thou shalt not be uninformed about a problem. I don't feel like it's fair to judge the leadership in the air traffic control centers on this day that nobody could have ever imagined possible. So that is difficult. However, it is a good reminder that as effective leaders, our goal should be to create a supportive, cooperative environment through our communication with others, no matter the situation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Ferrante, and first I would like to thank Natalie for her comments, and I would like to talk about groupthink. So, question number 3 asks, compare the factors present in groupthink to the this cannot be a hijacked mindset. So, in the text, we learned from sociologist Irving Janis as he describes groupthink as a mode of thinking that people engage in when they are deeply involved in a cohesive in group. So, using myself as an example, if I were in a group setting and there was things discussed, I might think of things internally that I might not share with the group, or I might conform to the overall group's decisions or what I assume that they're thinking, just so that I can conform to the group without sharing my ideas. So basically, I might think of something that I might want to share, but I might avoid doing that just to comply with the group. So we have two situations in Flight 93. We have those who are on the ground with air traffic control the government, that the plane was not responding, and the attacks happened prior to the Trade Center and to the Pentagon. But I think the mentality was, this plane's not hijacked. Let's try to figure out what we can do to fix it, or let's find out. Rather than breaking that groupthink and starting to express, hey, something's wrong, this plane is hijacked, and following through on their feelings, I think that a lot of times, because the majority of the group was trying to be calm, that they avoided sharing those ideas and making decisions to do something to fight back. Now that's air traffic control and the government, those on the ground. Now those who are on the plane, I can only imagine what they were feeling. In a life and death situation, I would want to believe that if I were part of that situation, I would want to believe that everything was okay. So deep down inside, everybody's trying to be calm as possible, but deep down knowing that this is the worst situation that they could be in. Since everybody else was complying with the hijackers by going to the back of the plane and not fighting back initially, individually everyone was battling with the idea of fighting back. And so they were waiting to see what to do. Now, how could groupthink have been avoided? I honestly, in my opinion, don't think that it could have been avoided. Both those who were on the ground trying to figure out what was going on with the plane and those on the plane, they didn't have the information right there available to know what to do. You think about it as, watching the movie, I thought about what would I have done if I were a passenger, or what would I have done if I was in air traffic control or the government. And it's easy for me to say, this is what should have been done. The passengers should have fought back sooner, or this should have been done sooner. So it's easy because we can see and we know years later what happened. But in the moment, these individuals didn't have all the information they needed to support their thoughts. So in a way, groupthink, everybody was trying to be calm. Everybody was trying to figure out what was going on. But I would say that those who were on the plane were heroic and breaking that groupthink. Initially, everybody wanted to be calm and assume everything was going to be okay, that they were going back to the airport, that they'd be fine and go back to their families. But they had to break that thought process, which they did, and knew that they had to fight back. And so I think groupthink could have been avoided if there was more information. I think throughout the movie we can see different scenarios in where they were combating their ideas of what should we do this, should we not. So I don't think it's something that could have been avoided, but I think additional information and better communication, like Natalie mentioned, would have helped the situation a little bit more. Now, I believe that groupthink is is difficult to break because, again, information needs to be there, and as more and more people start to speak up, then that's when decisions could be made. I appreciate the opportunity to watch this video. It's always a touchy subject with 9/11 and remembering where I was at the moment, but I am very grateful for those brave men and women who fought back on Flight 93, and I hope that they will always be remembered for their heroic act of fighting back. Now I'll turn the time over to Rob.
Well, hello, Team 3 and Management 561, as well as Professor Hanshaw. My name is Rob Alexander. I'm going to be going over two of my questions that I had, questions 5 and 6, regarding Flight 93. I'll say thank you to Natalie and Ryan for your answers on questions 1 through 4. So I'll dive right into question 5. So with focus on the rules of engagement and shoot down authority, identify the factors contributing to the lack of authority and decision making portrayed in the film. Well, unfortunately, the film doesn't go into much detail with rules of engagement or shoot down authority. There's a very brief segment where they're talking to the F-16 pilots about what kind of ammunition they have on board, and they only had 20 millimeter rounds, which wouldn't have really brought down a plane. It just would have crippled it. So I had to do a little bit of digging on this. So formal rules of engagement refer to the orders issued by a competent military authority that delineate when, where, how, and against whom military force may be used. Uh, and they have implications for what actions soldiers may take on their own authority and what directives may be issued by a commanding officer. The authority to shoot down a civilian aircraft is delegated to a very small number of very senior officials, civilian and military, within the Department of Defense. It is tempting to think that in a crisis situation that involves national security, ultimate authority lies solely with the president. Surely the president feels the weight of responsibility in these situations more keenly than anyone else. In a sense, when national survival is at stake, he comes closest among all elected officials to embodying national sovereignty. It is why, even in the most urgent matters of national security, presidents rarely can be said to exercise command authority, and in more mundane matters, the idea that presidents act unilaterally is more myth than reality. So if they do execute these kind of orders, they're basically playing God, and that takes a lot of character and courage to make those ultimate decisions. And then question number 6, from a paradoxical or contradictory viewpoint, provide a diagnosis of the two viewpoints. Again, I didn't feel that the Flight 93 movie captured, this content very well. So I had to do a little digging again, and I found that both President Bush and Vice President Cheney had a meeting around 10 o'clock in the morning East Coast time on September 11, 2001, which was 1 hour and like 15 minutes to an hour and a half after the first plane had crashed into the World Trade Center, during which Bush authorized Cheney to give orders for the military to shoot down any civilian airliner that did not respond to commands. However, this communication for this initial conversation is sketchy, and it led some to argue that Cheney went ahead and issued shoot down orders shortly after 10 on his own, and then retroactively sought the president's authorization after these orders had already been given. The first interceptors, or the first F-16 jets that were deployed to the scene, were ordered out of Otis Air Force Base in Massachusetts at 8:46 a.m., just as American 11 had struck the North Tower. These pilots did not receive any shoot-down orders prior to their takeoff from the Air Force Base. And then a second group of F-16s launched from Andrews Air Force Base, and these aircraft were on a kamikaze mission, or an intercept position kind of mission, to just ram the aircraft if they had to, because they didn't have missiles as well. So they were also not issued shoot down orders or any type of rules of engagement, and they didn't receive any type of engagement rules until after they were in the air. And they were not even scrambled or given the orders to depart by NORAD. NORAD is the North American Air Defense Command. They were actually given by the CIA, the Secret Service was actually the ones who scrambled them. And even the vice president was mistaken in his belief that shoot-down authorization had been passed to the pilots flying at NORAD's direction. So by 10:45, there was, however, another set of fighters circling Washington that had entirely different rules of engagement. And those flights had been launched at 10:38 from Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland in response to information passed to them by the Secret Service. But rather than take to the air with orders to shoot, they instead operated under weapons-free permissive rule of engagement. So the local commander was told to send up the aircraft with orders to protect the White House and take out any aircraft that threatened the Capitol. And this was translated in military terms to flying weapons free. So that is the decision to shoot. The decision to shoot rests in the cockpit, or in this case, in the cockpit of the lead pilot. And then we got Flight 93 in general, and I'm over my time already, so I'll try to wrap this up. But given the confusing responses to the president's shoot-down orders, it seems the debt we owe to the heroism of the passengers and crew on that flight, September 11, 2001, is even greater than many of us had perhaps realized. Had they not acted, there's no certainty anyone else would have been in a position to bring down that aircraft. And this whole process and this whole talk about Flight 93 actually hits me kind of hard in the heart here, because my last ship was USS Somerset LPD 25, which was named after Flight 93. And I did 4.5 years on board Somerset, and we got to meet a lot of the families of the survivors, and my time on board, and got to design a bunch of different stuff, and this hat included. And as you can see, it's got the 93 on it, and then the the polo I'm wearing also has our ship's crest on it. And then I designed a couple of coins. Also, it's got a plane on the back with the time it crashed at 10:03 a.m. And I designed this coin for our commanding officer. So it's got the "Let's Roll" that Todd Beamer said. And he gave this one to me for helping him design it. And then I got a Flight 93 flag that was designed by Gene Stilp, who lives in the Pennsylvania area around where the flight crashed. And it's got a 93 with 50 stars around it. And it says, "Our nation will eternally honor the heroes of Flight 93. So watching this film again was pretty heartbreaking for me, and knowing what really happened, and seeing the families of the ones that lost their loved ones was pretty hard to take. So I hope this video works out, and I'm glad I could help with answering these questions. You guys have a good day.
Well, my name is Cristhian Vasquez. I will be covering question number 7, 8, and 9. Question 7. Outline the decision-making process display and everyone land regardless decision. Was the decision made too early or too late? Why? Analyze both options. I would like to start this question by saying that the passengers in Flight 93 had many tough choices in how to respond to the situation. At the beginning of the hijack, it seems like the terrorist plan was coming along. As time went by, the passengers were able to notice the situation. I think the decision was not made too early or too late. I think that the decision was made from the information that the passengers received from their family members. For instance, in the beginning, the passengers believed that they were heading back to the airport. One of the terrorists had bombs strapped around his body. Due to the lack of information at the beginning, no passenger thought that the intentions of the terrorist was to strike a building. Once information came from family members that the mission was a suicide mission, the passengers prepared to attack and take over the plane. Now that the passengers knew that the mission is a suicide mission, the passengers had no choice but to try to take over the plane, regardless of the outcome. I truly believe that the passengers are all heroes because they prevented the plane from crashing into another building. Sadly, none of the passengers survived the crash, but they were able to save lives by not allowing the terrorists to hit the target. Question number 8. Discuss the passive passenger. Should interference or non-interference have occurred? During the film, I saw passengers not interfering with the group who was planning to take action. Not all individuals are leaders. For instance, the passive passenger is described in the textbook as laissez-faire. Laissez-faire is letting things take their own course without interfering. Therefore, the passive passenger responded by not doing anything. I do not think that the laissez-faire passengers should have changed the course. I believe that some individuals are not leaders and not all individuals can be leaders. However, The other pathogen seems to be using the democratic style. The democratic style encouraged participation from group members to come with a decision. I did see the group speaking about how to take over the plane. I did not see any autocratic style in the film. There was not one person who took over control of the situation and demanded people to do things a certain way. Question number 9. Is profiling critical to law enforcement? Is profiling racism? Is profiling ethical? Profiling can be a serious topic. If not used correctly, it can harm people. At the beginning of the film, when the passengers are scanning their ticket, you could see the names. The names that sounded from the Middle East were the names of the terrorists. I think that profiling is critical to law enforcement if it is used correctly. For instance, knowing the background of an individual can raise the red flag and law enforcement can respond and investigate. However, profiling can be racist. For instance, not all Middle East individuals are terrorists. By stopping and interrogating every Middle East individual will be racist. I do not think that profiling is ethical. One bad apple does not mean that all apples are bad. I think that profiling can raise the flag, but research must be done before processing to investigate a certain group.